Before we begin, I would like to announce that I do not support any ideology or regime. These videos are for educational purposes only, mainly for reenactment or collectors that like collecting these uniforms or medals and patches or whatever else. So, again, I do not support any ideology or regime. So in today's video, as the title has already stated, we're going to be covering the putting on or sewing on of collar tabs and shoulder boards on a M27 officer's uniform, mainly known to be part of the Reichswehr. So first, you're going to need your collar tabs, then obviously your shoulder boards. These are shoulder boards to sew in. Now, yes, this means you're going to have to open the jacket on its shoulder and sew these in accordingly, but don't worry, I'll show you how to do that. And last but not least, the jacket. Oh shit. Now, since my table is rather small, I'm just going to have to hold it. So if you're wondering why I didn't throw in an eagle for this uniform, reason being is because I'm modeling the uniform after the brother of Walter von Brauchitsch, which his name was Adolf von Brauchitsch, and he wore the uniform we're about to put together. So first, we're going to start with the collar tabs. Now, we all know that these collar tabs, they just get slapped on like this, right? The big question, however, is where exactly? Well, believe it or not, there's a really easy solution to position your collar tab to make it look perfect. Take a tape measure, or anything to measure, and take it and place it right here on this line. Now, most uniforms will have a line around this collar. You can see that seam. So use it, place your collar parallel to it. This right here doesn't matter for now. And measure 1 centimeter roughly away along this line. Clearly this thing won't stay, so we're just going to use some double-sided tape. Now, measuring the front is easy as we already lined up the top line of the collar, or the collar tab. This oftentimes lines up parallel with this. Not always, as you can see, but for the most part it works. So the distance here should roughly be half a centimeter, so 5 millimeters roughly. Now, how to attach this piece? Fairly simple. Now, obviously, we're going to need a needle and some white thread. Now, it's not going to really matter what thread we actually use because we're going to use the ladder stitch instead of stitching right through the collar itself. Everybody knows, or that has tried to sew on one of these mounted collars, it's a pain to get through the stiffening material. Now, I'm pretty sure, or well, I know I was, that some people aren't accustomed to sewing. But don't worry, this is fairly easy. The first thing you will want to do, find a needle or take your needle and use 2 strands of your thread. Reason being is because it reinforces it and ensures that it won't rip or that it will come loose anytime soon. Also, at the end of your thread, make sure you tie a knot or double the knot. I doubled it, is even better than just one time. But if you only feel like doing it once, that should work too. Now, the way you're going to start this is you're going to come down from underneath the collar and go up into the side or right here where it folds over, and then go right back down into the collar. I'll show you. So it should look like this once you went through the side of the collar tab and through the collar. Now, to continue this, simply go back down through the collar, come back up, and keep continuing this. But remember, always keep the line or the hole from the actual collar to the tab pretty parallel, pretty much to the same level, or else you're going to move the collar tab once you actually pull this down. So, we'll be back. Once you're finished, make sure you tie everything off. Spacing on the stitching doesn't matter. To me, it doesn't really matter how pretty it is. It definitely doesn't look the prettiest, but it works. It does the job. It looks perfect to me. I like the way it looks. The stitch is hidden, and it was way easier than going through the stiffening material. And Now when you close it, it looks actually just like it's supposed to be there. So yes, do this with the other side and boom, there are your collar tabs. So once you're done sewing on the collar tabs, it should look like, or at least something like this. Looks decent, fits, and don't worry if it's off by a millimeter or so. There is always tolerance when sewing these on, especially when it comes down to the quality of the uniform, so don't worry. So next up, the shoulder boards. Now to put the shoulder boards in, we're going to have to open this seam right here. Now it is not really difficult to know where exactly you're going to have to put it, since we have the mounting bracket right here and the button as a reference point. So you just take like so, and we now roughly know where it belongs. Now to open this seam, simply use this tool. I'm not exactly sure what it is called, but or at least not in English. But yes, find this or use anything sharp and thin enough to get in between these two pieces of fabric to open up, well, about this much for the shoulder board. So once you have this open, it's gonna look pretty messy. So a lot of these uniforms are sewn 3 times at the shoulder, or at least twice. But don't worry, if it looks like this, it'll be just fine. Now that we have the space open, simply take your shoulder board and stuff it in there. Once you have it stuffed in there, make sure it fits the way you wanted and line it up, or somewhat line it up with the button. It doesn't necessarily have to stick out as far as the button is. We can always reposition the button, but because we're doing this right now, I will reposition it to where it fits. So once you have it sticking out the distance you want it to stick out, we will begin stitching right here underneath through the shoulder board right here on the same folded edge that we opened. This will be the same procedure as we used on the collar tabs, to where we cannot see the stitches we made, and it'll be perfectly inside the shoulder seam. So see you when I get this done. Now once you have your shoulder board sewn in, it should look a lot like this. Now don't worry if you can move it. This is perfectly fine considering how thin the outer layer is without the inside. So don't worry if this feels a little too loose. As long as it sits, that's fine. I already did the job of taking off the button and marking it where it was. So next, we're going to sew on the button. So to sew on the button, I'll use 5 strands as a precautionary measure to ensure that the button will seriously sit there, just like on the other side as it came originally. I don't know if you can see it. It's pretty thick though, and it's pretty sturdy, so we will do the same thing. So to start it off, we're going to put our strands of string straight through here, through the button loop, and tie a knot around it to give it a good start. So once you've done that, it should look like this. Now you can make this thicker by using multiple strands. I decided to use 5 since I believe that is enough. Now for this process, we are going to use a bigger needle to attach the button. So don't use the smaller one, or, well, you'll notice you won't be able to use a smaller one or anything with a smaller hole than this. So be sure to use a proper needle. Once you put it through the shoulder board and everything's tied the way you want it to, you can simply begin with stitching it on there. There you go. And there's the first stitch. Once you have it all looped through your shoulder board and all tied off, you're ready to simply begin sewing it on there by poking through the marked spot. Once you have attached the button, it should look something like this. Now it's time to simply remove the bracket. Now I'm not going to specifically show you how to do it. Simply use this tool and remove these two bits, the two sides it is sewn onto, and simply take it out. And done. There you have it, a sewn-in shoulder board. The first tutorial on YouTube ever to show how to sew in these officer shoulder boards. And once you have both sewed in, you are done. This is it. This is how to attach collar tabs and shoulder boards. Yes. So, if you liked this video, and if you would like to see more, hit that like button, subscribe, and of course that bell icon, that is so important nowadays. And let me know in the comments which one you would like to see next, or if there's anything you would like to know. So, till next time, and thanks for tuning in.